Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here, although I'm an outsider to the multimedia community. It was really interesting to see all of the talks in the morning and the afternoon sessions. So what I'll be talking about in the remaining, I hope not 1 minute, is information retrieval evaluation. And when I'm saying information retrieval, I mostly mean text retrieval. Okay, I think most of the things could easily apply to multimedia. So try to make the connections. It was not very easy for me to do the connections on slides, but throughout the day I've seen a couple of them. So basically, this is the goal of any benchmarking when we try to benchmark information retrieval systems. So the idea of the evaluation is, if we change the search algorithm, right, do we make the user happier or not? Okay, so this is what we want to actually measure in information retrieval. So this is obviously it's not an easy task, right? So what does it really mean, happiness? Okay, how do you measure happiness? So measuring happiness is difficult. So basically, information retrieval scholars, they have come up with all these different methods to do the evaluation. So user studies, online evaluation, and then offline collection-based evaluation, which is most of the things that I have seen here today. So I'm not going to talk at all about user studies, but let me briefly say a couple of things about online evaluation or in situ evaluation. So basically, in online evaluation, you have two algorithms that you want to compare, two ranking algorithms that you want to compare, and essentially, let's consider A/B testing. You show a version of one of the algorithm to a set of users A, and a different version to another set of users, and then you start kind of collecting feedback in some way, and you compare the two algorithms. Okay. What's good about this online evaluation, this A/B testing, is that it provides this high fidelity. Okay, so you have actual users that provide signals to you, and it's not some anonymous assessors that label stuff. Okay, and so that's you're kind of more sure that whatever you do generalizes to your user base. The bad thing is, first, that you need to have some online system, right? So you do the A/B testing or interleaving or whatever you choose. The second thing is that signals are not very clear. So what does it really mean for someone to click on a result or spend some time reading it or not click at all? Right. So on the other side of the spectrum is the collection-based evaluation, which is what most of us at least are used to. This is what we call sort of Cranfield collections. So you can think of it as machine learning test beds, right? Or in information retrieval, we don't have just feature vectors. We provide documents and queries. In your case, would be images, videos, and queries. And then people have to extract features themselves, but also they come with labels. So in the case of text retrieval, it would be like whether a document is relevant to the query. Now, there is a gap between users and annotators. So annotators, there are some people that they label stuff, and maybe they don't label the same way that users do. But at the same time, these sort of collections, they allow to reuse the collection. So you can use the collection as many times as you want, right? You develop a new algorithm, you can reuse the collection, repeat the experiment, and reproduce the results. So basically, if we look at the evaluation landscape, there is a system focus with the collection-based evaluation. There is a user focus with the online kind of evaluation and user studies. And what we try to do almost the past decade was to bridge the two worlds. So the idea is starting from the collection-based evaluation and try to put the user in the loop. I've been coordinating 2 tracks the past 7-8 years. One of them is the track session track, the other is the track tasks track. But there are other efforts that try to put the user in the loop, the track total recall task and the track open search. I'll briefly talk about all of them. So in the track total recall, so I've heard some of your tasks also care a lot about recall. Okay, so people, at least in the text retrieval, realize that building a system that takes a query and finds all the relevant information just by that, it's a very hard task. So instead, what they thought of doing is building systems that actually communicate with the users. So instead of providing a ranked list of everything at once, they provide a couple of documents, in your case images, videos, whatever. Then they get feedback from the user on these tasks, on these items, and retrain the model. So it's kind of an active learning approach. To build these systems, you need a collection, a test collection, that is kind of dynamic, right? Every time the system provides an item to the user has to come back with a label. And obviously you cannot have access to users every time you build an algorithm. So what the track total recall track did is they built this sort of dynamic collection. So a priori they judge the entire collection. They have labels on items on the entire collection, and then every time a system returned an item, they would simulate a user giving back the label. And so essentially it's a simulation where the system provides an item to the user, they get back a label, and they retrain. So essentially this goes a little bit closer to the user in the sense that it's not like a one-shot thing that a query, okay, give me everything, but the system can talk to the user and use the feedback of the user to keep on digging to find all relevant information. Now, in reality also the user doesn't only provide feedback on documents or images, but oftentimes, at least in web search, they also reformulate their queries. So search is not like one query shot and then the user disappears. The user may be interacting with the retrieval system, reformulating queries, and keep on searching for quite some time. So this was the goal of the track session track that we ran back in 2010, so for 5 years. We had two specific goals there, building test collections that can help improve search, but not only looking at the current query of the user, but looking at the history of the interactions. And the second goal was to actually realize what the overall task is of the user wants to achieve, and basically perform well over the entire search session. Okay, so not only on a query, but kind of do well overall. So the first goal, I mean, if you look at it, the very simple example is a user typing in Paris luxurious hotels and then reformulating her query to Paris Hilton. And if you go to any web search engine, you will get results about Paris Hilton, the model, while at least some disambiguation could have taken place here if you would look back at the session. So we built a collection of more than 200 topics of varying difficulty and type, and about 65,000 labeled documents. And here what we provided to the participant is a session of user trying to resolve his task with all kind of information, the queries he submitted, the clicks, the dwell times, how much time he spent reading documents, browsing the SERP, and then a final query for which the systems had to take into account the previous session and do stuff. So the second goal actually proved much harder. So the question in the second goal is actually whether we can test systems while the user is searching. So test the system on the first query that the user types in, and then test it on the second query, and so on and so forth. That was a rather difficult task, so it's kind of even monkeys fall off trees. I will not go so much into details because I don't have much time, but the idea is there that you need not only to simulate user feedback, you have to simulate user reformulating queries to make the whole collection reusable. So that was difficult. So instead, what we did is as you know, the typical things that people do when they can't deal with users, they marginalize them out. So we took actually the user out of the evaluation loop, and we said, okay, let's say instead of looking at a single query, let's look at users' tasks, how you know, users deal with their tasks. And that was the track tasks track that is still running, and it's going to be running next year. And the idea here was to basically not only try to resolve not only try to answer the user's query at that moment, but given a query, try to understand what is the underlying subtasks. You know, what are the, you know, the different things that the user needs to do to fulfill his task. And basically then try to provide all the necessary information for all these different subtasks. So if you take as a task, make improvements at home, you know, the system had to identify all kinds of things that, you know, a user needed to do to improve things at home. And maybe that would be a hierarchy of tasks, right? So for decorating kitchen, there would be some other subtasks. And that was a task understanding. And then essentially for a particular sub-task, provide all the resources to solve this task. All right. So in the remaining 4 minutes, so these were the basic things that we were trying to do to put the user back in the loop. Obviously, the tasks track kind of approaches the second goal of the sessions track, you know, getting the overall user session, but not really, because it just removes the user. So in the next clay, I will be coordinating this this new lab, which for now it's a type of workshop where we would like to be looking at how to actually simulate user, so we can build these simulated dynamic collections where users, you know, simulated users would reformulate their queries. They will we will simulate clicks, dwell times, and figure out essentially how we can provide this dynamic simulation for people building retrieval systems that can interact with the user. Right, so I think I'm gonna skip the track open search. Oh, actually, maybe I should mention it, because I've overheard people talking about this kind of stuff during lunch. So there is also a track open search task that is running next year as well. So there you actually do get live traffic, okay, so real users. There are sites like Microsoft Academic Search that donate traffic to the track, and then people will be comparing their algorithms to Microsoft Academic Search algorithm in an interleaved experiment live. Okay, so that's a sort of going much closer to the so it's a living lab. Okay, and so my last advertisement, given that I have only 2 minutes, is this workshop that we are running on the 1st of December in London, and it's basically we're looking at practical issues. So, okay, we've been talking, well, in academia, we focus on theory, practice as well, but then, there are a lot of companies, a lot of organizations out there that they don't have the resources to do evaluation, or they face practical problems in evaluating stuff. So we're organizing this workshop, Evaluation in Practice, and the workshop actually is not only about text, it's multimedia, it's recommender systems, it's search, it's components that search systems are using, like named entity extractor or linking stuff. So if you're interested, register for the workshop. And that's all.